Dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency has been eroding since about the year 2000. At the beginning of the century, it was estimated that almost 75% of global central bank FX reserves were held in dollars. That number has decreased to around 60%. At the same time, global central banks have shifted a significant amount of reserves into gold, where they now hold in storage more than they have since the 1990s, and in some of the non-traditional reserve currencies like the Aussie dollar and the Canadian dollar.
The group of emerging economies known as BRICS makes up more than 40% of the world's population and a quarter of the global economy. And more countries want to join the club, which aims to challenge a world order seen to be dominated by the US and its Western allies.
The US dollar is strong not because of any single national trait, but because the global financial system relies on it. The dollar serves as the primary reserve currency and the main unit of settlement for many major commodity contracts, international loans, and cross-border payments. When the world uses the dollar to trade and price things, demand for dollars rises and whoever controls the dominant currency gains leverage to shape global financial rules. Imagine, then, a group of large economies saying, "Fine, you're strong, we won't play by your rules." That impulse underlies the push many countries in BRICS are making for greater financial independence. If one day a country's currency could be used widely in international trade without converting through the dollar, if actors didn't need to watch dollar exchange rates or hold their breath about US interest rate moves, the global financial game would change dramatically. This is what we'll unpack: what BRICS is, what concrete steps its members are taking, and what the broader implications might be if the dollar's dominance is reduced. BRICS began as a concept in 2009, with Brazil, Russia, India, and China. South Africa joined in 2010, giving the group the name BRICS. Over time, the bloc expanded its outreach and began inviting partners into a BRICS format. Countries such as Iran, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, and Ethiopia have been part of that widening circle. Collectively, these countries represent a huge share of the world's population, control significant natural resources, and host fast-growing consumer markets. That combination of population, resources, and market size gives BRICS economic weight that matters in any discussion of global finance. Why is there momentum to dollarize? Because the dollar is not just currency, it is power. The global payments infrastructure, large multilateral financial institutions, and the dollar's role in pricing commodities give some actors the ability to isolate other states financially. When a state is sanctioned or its banks are cut off from the main payment rails, its access to international finance and trade can be severely constrained. Recent history has provided sharp examples. Financial exclusion and sanctions have shown how monetary and banking tools can be deployed as geopolitical instruments. Those lessons motivate many countries to seek alternatives and safeguards against sudden exclusion. BRICS members and partners are pursuing multiple, concrete steps to reduce reliance on the dollar. First, they are promoting bilateral trade settlement in local currencies. Encouraging trade to be invoiced and settled directly in national currencies reduces the need to route payments through dollars, and it lowers demand for dollar reserves among trading partners. Second, they are building or expanding alternative payment infrastructures. China has developed CIPS cross-border interbank payment system, and Russia operates SPF's systems designed to process cross-border payments without necessarily depending on the dominant SWIFT network. The long-run aim is to improve interoperability among such systems, creating a payment network that is less subject to single-country leverage. This is technically and legally challenging. Standards, legal frameworks, and global bank connectivity all need to be solved for such a network to scale. Third, BRICS has developed parallel financial institutions. The new development bank was created to finance infrastructure and development projects with different conditionalities than traditional Western-led institutions. A robust set of internal financing options can reduce reliance on Western capital markets and provide an alternative source of lending when access to those markets is constrained. Fourth, there are exploratory discussions about digital currencies and even the idea of a shared settlement mechanism, sometimes loosely referred to as a BRICS coin. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being tested individually by several members, and in theory interoperable digital systems could facilitate cross-border settlements without routing everything through the dollar. But such ideas remain at a research or pilot stage. Governance, convertibility, trust, and the mechanics of cross-border interoperability are complex and unresolved. Energy and commodities are central to any potential shift away from the dollar. Oil, gas, and other major commodities are among the most heavily traded contracts in the world. If these markets, and especially energy trade, were regularly priced and settled in local currencies or through alternative arrangements, the global demand for dollars would diminish. That would be a structural shift, but achieving it requires deep, liquid markets in the substitute currencies, widely accepted hedging instruments and derivatives denominated in those currencies, and seller and buyer confidence that they will be paid and able to hedge their exposure. These financial plumbing problems are non-trivial. Liquidity and trusted market infrastructure are built over years or decades. There are important constraints and internal contradictions to consider. BRICS is not a monolith. Member states have different levels of exposure to Western capital, different trade patterns, and different strategic priorities. Some rely heavily on foreign investment from advanced economies. Others depend on export markets that remain dollar-centered. Not every member prioritizes rapid de-dollarizations. Some prefer a slow, cautious approach that preserves market stability. Infrastructure is another barrier. SWIFT and the established payment rails benefit from network effects. They are standardized, reliable, and globally recognized. Replacing that system or building a truly comparable alternative is expensive and time-consuming. Legal agreements, bank connectivity, compliance frameworks, including anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing rules, and currency convertibility must all be addressed. Trust and liquidity are further hurdles. A new settlement currency or payment platform needs market confidence. Central banks, commercial banks, corporations, and traders must trust that the currency will hold value and that positions can be hedged. Without deep markets, counterparties will be hesitant to adopt new arrangements on a large scale. Given these dynamics, we can imagine a few broad scenarios for the future. In the most likely gradual scenario, the world moves toward a more multipolar monetary system over many years. Local currency settlements increase regionally and within blocks. Alternative payment rails gain traction for certain bilateral or intra-block flows. The dollar retains a dominant but diminished role. This path reduces but does not eliminate dollar influence and gives countries more strategic options. A second intermediate scenario features selective shifts. Certain commodities or regional trades transition meaningfully away from dollar settlement, energy contracts being a prime candidate, triggering significant but partial reallocation of reserve holdings and adjustment in global financial markets. We would expect volatility during the transition as markets adapt, and substantial demand for new hedging and risk management instruments. A third, less likely short-term scenario is a rapid and broad replacement of the dollar's role by a new currency or network. That would require extraordinary levels of political coordination, deep and credible substitute currency markets, and widespread market trust conditions that are difficult to assemble quickly. While not impossible over a long horizon, this scenario is the least probable in the near term. What would these changes mean in practice? For central banks and multinational corporations, reserve and treasury management strategies would need to evolve. New instruments for risk management would arise. The balance of leverage in international relations might become more diffuse, reducing the effectiveness of single-country financial coercion, but potentially increasing the complexity of geopolitical alignments and financial governance. Institutions like the IMF and the World Bank could face greater pressure to reform, or alternative institutions might gain more prominence. To sum up, the dollar is unlikely to vanish overnight, but the movement toward a more multipolar monetary order is credible and observable in incremental steps. BRICS members are experimenting with trade settlement in local currencies, alternative payment rails, parallel financing mechanisms, and digital currency experimentation. These are long-term processes, technical, political, and economic, and their pace will depend on domestic priorities, market confidence, and international cooperation. The future of global finance may not be a single sovereign king of currencies anymore, but a more complex multipolar field with both new opportunities and new risks.